be showing you how to create a favorites button. So from our last video, I simply made a buttons feature that just showed the picture of each respective breed that you can choose here via the buttons. And I thought a good idea would be to create a favorites feature, which would just simply have a favorites button next to each one of these cat breeds where you can click and have that specific cat be added to a separate array that will be displayed somewhere else on the web page via a favorites list or something along those lines. So I think the first thing that I'm going to do, off the top of my head, I think it's also a good idea, is to begin by creating a uState hook, a favorite uState variable, and I'll show you. We can start by doing that. So this is because this would be set favorites. Hold on. uState. The initial value is going to be an array because it's going to contain multiple images of the cats that we favorited. And the reason that we're doing favorites, let's do set favorites. There we go. Favorites, set favorites, is because we are going to be taking specific individual cat breeds in the form of objects that are going to be stored one by one as elements into this array, which is then going to be, we're going to then use a map function within a return statement to display the those cats via their images. And we can take their images because the specific cat objects that we're going to be utilizing as elements within our array contain a property that have the image link inside of it. So this is what I'm talking about. So this is going to be the endpoint we're going to be using, and inside of this object, this is the property that we want, the URL property, and I'll show you how we can do that. So we're going to be storing this entire object as an individual element within our favorites array. And so let's start by doing that. So let's start by creating a favorites button. So let's just pick a good spot here. So why not just, let's make the button right below our cat breeds button. Just like that. And we'll call this favorite. And there, we got it to show up. And so this is going to be an on-click event. So we're going to do what we did above and use an anonymous function, arrow function, to call upon a function that we have not created yet, but we'll call this handle favorites. And this will be passing in a cat object. So let's then create our feature or our function. So we'll call this handle favorites. This will be taking in a cat argument, the individual cat object. Okay, so now what we want to do here is going to be similar to what we did within our useEffect hook, where we're calling upon an endpoint to retrieve a response object. But it's going to be a little bit different, and I'll show you why. So we can actually just copy this, and I'm going to make a few changes. So what I'm going to do is this endpoint is going to be changed. If you remember, I showed you this object. This is the endpoint that we want. And in order to actually get to this endpoint that's specific to the cat breed that the user has selected, we need to obtain the reference ID property that is found within the objects of our cat data array. And remember, this is the reference image ID, and if you remember from earlier, we have used this property before right here to show the image of the cats. So now we're going to be using that same property to help us to help us store this object within our favorites array. So let's do that. So let's change this, and let's change this endpoint. And we're going to be using a template literal, so we're going to be pressing the tilde key. Oops. The one that's right next to the left of the 1 key. There we go. And we're going to be copying this entire endpoint. And next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be deleting this, and we're going to do $, curly bracket, and it's going to be cat.ref. This is why we need, by the way, this is why we need to have the cat object passed in so that we can access its reference image ID. So it's cat.reference image ID. I think that's right, is it? Yeah, that's right. Okay, cool. So now we have our endpoint that we want. The next thing that we want to do is we want to store this object into our favorites array. So let's go, we're not going to be utilizing this state updater function. We're going to be saying set favorites instead. Excuse me. And this is going to be a little bit different from what we did above, in the sense that we are going to be using a arrow function to return an array. And I'll show you what I mean. So we're going to say set favorites, and we're going to name our arrow function previous favorites, arrow function array, the spread operator, previous favorites, comma, data. And that may seem a little bit confusing, but I'll try to explain. So what's happening here is that we are using a function, previous favorites, inside the argument of our set favorites updater function to return an array that's going to contain the elements that we have added to our favorites array, spread out into individual arguments that are then going to be passed into a new array that is also going to be combined with the specific cat object that the user has just clicked the favorite button on. So American short, for instance, if I click on the favorite button next to American Shorthair, this breed will be stored as our data variable. Remember, because it's an individual cat object, as a JSON object that gets stored into this new array as an individual cat object that is combined with all of the other previously selected cat objects that the user may have selected within their favorites list. So, in other words, that's how our app is able to store more than one cat breed by using the spread operator to keep track of the previous selected favorite cat breeds. So I hope that makes sense. I know that's a little bit tricky. That's something that you probably just have to think on for a while. I know I sure did. So that is what we want to be doing there when we call upon our fetch data function like we did before. That looks good. That looks good. So now what we have accomplished here is that we have successfully figured out a way to store each cat breed into our favorites array. So now the next step is pretty simple. We just want to use the map function to display all of those cats that we've just favorited. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's see here. So we'll put the favorites at the top. So let's do this. Let me just label this so it's a little bit easier to read. We'll say H3, favorites. Okay, and then right below the favorites, we will use the map function, favorites.map. We'll call each element favorite. Use an arrow function, and then we're going to be doing another set of parentheses because we're going to be returning, and we can just be copying this image tag. I think that's fine. We'll make some changes actually. So the key is going to be favorite.id. The source is going to be favorite.url. So instead of having to, when we had our images down here, we had to insert a property in the middle of a URL. Here we can just take the URL directly because we already have the specific cat object that we need. And then now, oops, we just want to have the same styling, so we can just copy that. All right, perfect. Okay, so I think that should work. So let's actually try. Let's refresh. All right, there we go. And as you can see, I'm just clicking random cats and it's storing them as favorites and showing them right below the favorites section. And yeah, so that's how you can create your own favorites component inside your app. And yeah, hope you liked it. Thank you.